With Season 2 of Year 9 bringing a lot of changes to the core game, how did the overall experience of the game change? With all of the focus directed towards the admittedly very cool designed new hero, other major changes that were implemented with the new patch were completely overshadowed. So let me give all of you a rundown on the newest season and with that, everything that is noteworthy. I know that most people just want to see me talk about the new hero, so I'm just gonna hop straight into it. Virtuosa is a new hybrid hero that combines a pseudo-key stance of Shaolin with a stance that can be compared to a full block stance like Kyoshin. She utilizes her so-called postures to give certain attacks new properties, giving her the ability to adapt to many different combat scenarios. Like many other heroes, Virtuosa has access to a front step bash and a feintable zone attack that will help her start a fight. Everything after her first attack though is completely dependent on which side she attacked from. After a successful attack, meaning if a light wasn't blocked, or if a heavy wasn't parried, she enters the corresponding posture. After she fully enters the stance and remains in that form, Virtuosa auto-dodges all attacks that are dodgeable. This includes, but is not limited to, normal lights, heavies, and bashes of all types, unblockables, teammates, and even projectile feats. Oh, and the ballista, of course you can dodge that. These dodges will be performed without any player input, meaning as long as you're in any posture, you're invulnerable to anything but AoE feats like Arrow Strike and Guard Breaks. And since she's dodging, you are also vulnerable to undodgeable attacks. So, let's go over what changes with each and every corresponding side she can enter. This time, starting from the right side and working ourselves counterclockwise to the left. Something that is very important to memorize is that after you enter a stance, every attack, regardless of the side, will inherit the properties of that stance. So let me start off with an example so you can better visualize what I mean by that. I do a neutral heavy attack from the right side, meaning I enter her right posture, also known as guard posture. In this stance, every heavy attack I perform gains hyper armor almost immediately after startup. Lights that are performed from this stance gain the superior block property. After I perform an attack from any other side other than the right one, she will switch stance into the corresponding one. Meaning, if I would do a top light attack, I would immediately enter her top stance. What is also worth mentioning is that regardless of the stance you're currently in, she also gains the ability to perform a unique bash that changes with every stance. Since I'm already talking about her right stance, in her guard stance, she does a massive fucking roundhouse kick that would make Chuck Norris blush. This attack on its own doesn't confirm anything, which is kinda stupid, but it has the ability to wall splat, confirming a heavy and therefore giving you the option to switch to a new stance if you desire. This kick is guard break punishable. Now let us talk about the stance you should be using the most. Her top stance, meaning her dual posture. As already stated, after performing an attack from the top guard, she enters the top posture. While in the Count Dooku form, all of her heavies become unblockables. Her lights become fast poking tools. And the most important part of the stance, she gains an insanely fast kick that guarantees a light from any side and is completely unpunishable. Since she can perform a top light after a kick, she can go right for another kick, and another, and another, and then another, you get the idea. This is her pressure stance, with unblockables and bashes, giving her the option to open up her opponent and deal a lot of damage very fast. I will bring it up here, since This is not stated anywhere else. As long as you're in any posture, you don't regenerate stamina. Keep that in mind while fighting. Coming to her last stance, the left one, the swan posture, which absolutely doesn't describe what it actually does. This stance is her ganking stance, giving her fast lights that deal bleed damage and hard-hitting heavy attacks. Personally, I barely use this stance for anything but applying bleed to somebody who's in revenge. Her bash in this stance deals okay damage and confirms basically any follow-up attack of your teammates. These are the basics of the hero, which, as you can tell, is already a mouthful. Things only get more complicated from now. Something that I have yet to mention is the ability to soft feint posture heavies into any other posture attack from a different side. I will not be going into extreme depth regarding this, but in a 1v1 situation, soft feinting a top unblockable into right heavy will catch your opponent's dodging. With that being said, on a completely other note, I love the design of her. This whole happy-go-lucky personality is such a breath of fresh air, and her emotes show this off perfectly. Virtuosa could possibly be the only entity that actually enjoys being in the game. I mean, that could be because she looks drunk as fuck, but that's beside the point. For completion's sake, let me go over her feats very fast. The first one lets her enter the posture of the stance her guard is currently at, giving her quick access to a bash out of neutral. What is also insanely strong about this feat is that if you have about 90% revenge and are fighting multiple people at once, entering this stance basically guarantees revenge, since, well, they will have to guard break you out of it, feeding you a lot of revenge in the process. Her second feat is absolutely insane. It's a passive on a 10-second cooldown that will give you 10 life for entering any posture stance. This may sound like it's not that much, but the amount of passive healing this provides is beyond insane. If the fight goes on longer than 30 seconds, you will basically have had a tough as nails as a second feat. Her third feat is a bit underwhelming, making her posture counter strikes debuff your opponent's defense. Cool to have, but nothing that decisive. Her fourth feat though is game changing. She will heal every friendly hero for 50 health and give them a defensive buff for 15 seconds. This heal will cleanse bleed and burn, basically giving Fire Flask a huge middle finger in the process. Well, now since Virtuosa has gotten the attention she deserves, let's talk about the thing that will actually have more of an impact to the game than her release. The changes to ganking. Without getting too technical, ganking as a whole had a major rework and has gotten a lot worse and more difficult to perform optimally. Since For Honor has so many damn options when it comes to attacks from heroes, the devs made the somewhat deliberate choice to blanket nerf a lot of moves. They did this by giving almost all attacks a universal increased hit stun. For anyone that isn't an absolute nerd, that means getting hit by an attack will no longer confirm another attack. This removes a lot of BS 100-0 ganks that shouldn't have been in the game in the first place. Sadly, a lot of already underwhelming ganking heroes were also hit hard by these changes. Overall, you will notice that you will be gaining revenge a whole lot more often, since the damage reduction on continuous attacks is massive. Ganks like Shinobi's front step bash that were so easy to set up are no longer as deadly. Ganks like Nobushi's full stance and someone else spamming bashes also no longer work. If you want a more in-depth explanation, I will link a Reddit post in the description that explains the overall changes very well. With all of that being said though, I have one more thing to say. Watch yourselves out there, okay?